And we're live. Welcome to the Techie Books live interview. We're interviewing Jane Glatt, author of Ungilded, which of course this time I didn't have ready like I did last time.
I do.
Okay, then you put up your book and then say hi, Jane.
I don't actually have the hard copy of the book. Can you see that?
Yeah.
A very, very pretty cover, which I'm very delighted with.
That's good.
Yeah. Hi. Second time around because user error.
Technical difficulties.
Oh, user error from the last one.
And then this time we're a little late. Partly I started a little late because my computer was acting silly. And then we just, technical difficulties. That's the way it goes. Okay, I'm just actually going to say we're live now because on Facebook I was saying technical difficulties.
Okay.
So why don't we start? We are redoing this one, but why don't we start? Tell us a little bit about the book and a bit about yourself.
So the book is about a journey. I guess it's a quest. And for me, the underlying issue is kind of personal power and personal responsibility. So we start off with Kara, who is at 16, an adult, and she's in a world where everything is run by guilds, and she's part of the Mage Guild, but she doesn't have any magic. So at 16, she has some limited options, and she, at her mother's urging, decides to run away. Me personally, I live in downtown Toronto. That's kind of it. I spend a lot of time at my computer in my little, in my little office. I do get out, but.
Okay, well, why don't we go straight into Ungilded? You just said it's built on a guild system. So what inspired you to use guilds? Why did you decide to go that route?
So I just find guilds really interesting, particularly in Venice in kind of the 13th, 14th centuries. They had a lot of power to the point where they kind of like colluded for pricing, and they really dictated if let's say you were a shoemaker, the guild would tell you what kind of shoes you could make and what price you had to charge for those shoes. You didn't have a lot of options. And I'm pretty sure that if you were a shoemaker outside of the guild, they kind of hunted you down. So I just found that kind of very authoritarian society would fit with what I was trying to do, which is have somebody kind of break free of those kind of constraints.
So if they weren't part of a guild, what were their options? Lightly in the book, we don't want to get too spoilery, but in general.
So not a whole lot of options. So you're either in the guild or you're not in the guild. In the guild, if you're not in the guild, then you're really kind of out in the wilderness. And there are people in my book, there are people that are ungilded, and they do choose to live outside of the guilds. They don't want the direction. They want to make their own choices. When you're in the guild, it's very much like an internal political system. It's like who your dad was, or who your family is. Depends on like the placement in the guild and the power you have in the guild, and the wealth and opportunities is really much based on kind of the political stuff. Except for Mage Guild, where really it's based on how powerful you are from a magic perspective, although there's a lot of internal politics that go along with that too.
So you have the Mage Guild, you have a Guider Guild, Server Guild, Warrior Guild, Mason Guild. What other guilds are there in your book, and are there any guilds that you were going to put in the book but ended up not?
I think I have an arts guild. I really tried to keep the number of guilds down and I tried to think of all the tasks that people would perform in that kind of society and try to place them in a guild. Like Guider Guild, that would be, you know, the shipping. It would be like wagon trains, and as part of wagon trains, then they're the people that kind of use all the like burrows and things like that. So I didn't have a lot that I kept like that. There weren't a lot of guilds that I kept out or that I thought of that I didn't put in. I just, yeah, probably doesn't work 100%, but I did try to think of what are the tasks that people did in that type of society and place them into one of the guilds that I had set up.
So I'm assuming it's a given, even if a guild wasn't mentioned. Most, in the book, you're just assuming they are part of a guild in general.
Yeah, that's correct.
You also mentioned in our previous interview, we'll talk a little bit about your main character, Kara, and how her not having magic is actually more like synesthesia. Did you want to go into that?
Yeah, so synesthesia is something, it's not a disease, it's a condition where your senses get crossed. So one of the most common one is that people see numbers in different colors. And so for instance, there's tests where you have like, a 1 by 1 foot screen filled with threes, and then you have a couple of fives thrown in there. Well, people with synesthesia, because they see the fives as red and the threes as brown, let's say, they can pick out the fives immediately. And so what I've done with the kind of non-magic that Kara has, she can't do magic, but she can see magic. And it is based on some synesthesia people that they see sound as these waves of color. So that's where that came from.
Okay. So we'll go back to the book in a minute, but I'm going to jump around here a bit. Tell us a bit about your writing process. Do you have a outline? If so, is it detailed, or do you just go?
I have it's not detailed. It's I maybe do a dozen pages. So I actually spend a lot of time on world building, partly because I think it's really fun, and partly because I think that really it's like a character in a way, and it really kind of defines some of the story elements. So generally I have ideas, maybe a couple of ideas floating around. Like for me, it was the guilds and synesthesia. So I started thinking about a character that somehow these things were affecting her. So I think I came up with the names. I find naming characters very difficult. I hate it. But I think it's a really important thing because I think it should say something about your character. So I'll come up with some of the key characters, like a rough outline of who they are, and then I'll start doing the world building, and then I do kind of the 3-act outline, very high level. I know what the big hitting points are, and that can change as you go along because stuff happens when you write a book. Characters pop up that you didn't realize were going to be important, so that's always a fun thing. But yeah, I do an outline.
Okay. And do you find, I think you just sort of touched on it, the characters pop up that you weren't expecting to. Do you find your characters do what you want, or do you have to wrestle them into submission?
Generally, they're pretty good. I do find that almost every book I write, there's one character that kind of gets away from me. I tend to let them do that in the first draft, and then the second draft is when I kind of like make sure that they do what I want them to do. But I think the first draft is really like, let's just see what that character is going to end up doing, because at that point, if you have a really great character that you love, that you find really fun writing, then the second draft, you can go in and, you can make them more important from the beginning. So, and maybe your book's not what you thought it was about originally, or who you thought it was about originally.
So if anybody has questions, there's about a 20-30 second delay, but write them out. We'll get to them. So, and I just had a question on top of my tongue, and I interrupted it with that little bit. Isn't that terrible? So you've written other books then? That's what I was getting.
Yeah, I have a self-published trilogy in ebook format.
And that's you wrote that? Is that the one you wrote with Nalo Hopkins?
That's the one that I started. Yeah, I did a program at the Humber School for Writers, and I was paired up with Nalo Hopkinson, partly because she's like, this is very kind of writerly writers, and she was a fantasy writer, so I really wanted to work with her on that one. She was great. I have to say I learned a lot in that process, and just took my writing to a different level. But that was, yeah. So I'm not going to say we're BFFs.
We're back.
I've just been babbling. I don't know if I was live or not. So I've just been babbling.
Up for a little while.
Yeah. So maybe you can edit that.
Yeah. Let me just see where we left off here. Oh, no, not that. Oh, no.
I think we left off, I was talking about the Humber School for Writers.
Yes, I'm just not 100% sure how far it got.
Okay.
Come on. Here we go. No, okay, so it quit at. So it got to, you're not going to say we're BFFs.
Okay, good. Okay.
So, and then you lost me, and I'm probably my system. I've had to reboot it several times today. So you might have to do a virus check, although I just did one yesterday. So. Anyway, so we were talking about
Nalo Hopkinson, Humber School for Writers. I have read that her book Brown Girl in a Ring is going to be made into a movie, so that's I really love that book. But
that's good.
More about me, I guess, right? More about me. So Engilded is the first of a 2-book series, which and one of the characters we've already met kind of took over in the second book a little bit. So when I did my rewrites, I had to kind of corral him. Yeah. Manhandle him. So.
Well, that's good. So there's a second book we know. Do we have an approximate date when it's coming out? Has Margaret told you?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm hoping she's going to, anyways. Tell me soon.
Well, she's probably waiting to see what the sales are like for this one.
That's what I'm guessing.
Yeah. So you have the 2 books with Kara. We've talked about the guilds. We talked about Nalo Hopkinson. So is your your current project is the second book, or are you doing other things?
I have another 2-book series that's based on. The world is based on the London Bridge. When London Bridge actually it was more like a little town. They had a church, they had houses. It was kind of odd. So I found that a pretty fascinating kind of location.
Do you
And
find research is a big part of your writing?
a part of the world building, yes. Yeah. Um, and I would say that I do lots of like reading about writing tips from magazines and books and things like that. Um, how to plot, how to keep the tension, all of that stuff that helps writing.
Yeah. No, I was referring more to historical, like you're talking about a book set in London Bridge. So,
It's very, yeah. So I don't do a ton, but when I'm world building, I do, like, I read a book on Venice. Maybe I didn't read the whole thing. I read parts of it. I read some information about guilds. Um, the London Bridge. There's a book about London Bridge during that time. I read that. Yeah, so a little bit, but not a ton.
so does Venice itself interest you? Because you base these guilds on
I
Venice.
I thought I would get a trip to Venice when I started writing this, but I didn't.
Ah,
I did actually do a workshop in Vilnius, Lithuania, with this book, though.
so
It,
you were in Lithuania?
I was in Lithuania. It was something that the Humber School was associated with, and I thought I needed vacation. Um, I was working and making pretty good money at the time, so I said, why not? So yeah, I'd spent. So the workshop was about 10 days, and then after that I traveled. And I have to tell you that Tallinn, Estonia is a spectacular old city. So for if anybody wants to look at like a 13th century kind of city, is spectacular. But it's an interesting part of the world.
No, all of those old world stuff is interesting. It would be nice to have the time to just tour all of
Yeah.
the old world stuff.
Yeah.
So, if people wanted to stalk you, where would they go?
I have a author page on Amazon.com, one on Goodreads. I have a website, janeglatt.com.
And they can
A
always.
Twitter account
And what's your Twitter?
at Jane Glatt. Surprise.
Surprise. That's good. People can stalk you, and if they have anything, they can always email us, and we'll make sure you get it. Because reader feedback is always enjoyed, even if it's bad. It's good. No such thing as bad publicity.
Yeah, you don't get better unless you get feedback.
That's right. Is there? Oh yeah, your cat. We spoke of your cat last time.
Yeah.
Too. How helpful she is.
Oh yeah. She's old now, so she sleeps a lot. But I have to lock her in the bedroom because otherwise she'll just want attention. She'll want to know what I'm doing.
Mine's old, and she sleeps and doesn't want attention. She's actually beside me now, but she's 19 years old, so.
Oh wow.
She's just like, leave me alone.
Mine's 15.
So getting close.
Yep, getting up there.
Is there anything else you want to add? We've been at it about 20 minutes, so.
I don't think so. I think I've covered everything I had as talking points.
Yeah, I think we've discussed everything. I've got everything on my notes. I have notes. That's why I keep looking to the side. I look at the notes. Right, I have a cheat sheet. Okay, well, I want to thank you very much for joining us.
Okay, thank you.
And we won't be doing any interviews in July and August, but we will interview Randy McCharles in September. Thanks again.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.